A young millionaire dresses up as a beggar to see the reaction of a poor girl he is in love with. But when he enters her house, he is horrified by what he sees. Alexander grew up in a world where everything was easy. The family fortune provided him with a life of luxury, without any apparent worries. He was used to getting what he wanted without much effort, whether in business or in his personal relationships. However, something inside him always missed a genuine connection, something that money could not buy. When he met Gabriella, Alexander felt something different. She was simple, hard-working, with a strength and dignity that impressed him from the first moment. Gabriella did not seem to care about status or wealth. She valued people for who they were, not for what they had. For Alexander, who had always had the world at his feet, this was a new and disconcerting reality. Sitting in his luxurious living room, Alexander reflected on how his wealth could become a barrier between him and Gabriella. He was afraid that she would see him as just a rich man, someone with whom he would not have much in common. He decided that in order to get to know the real Gabriella, he needed to strip away all his advantages. If I want Gabriella to see who I really am, I need to present myself without any of that, Alexander thought out loud as he looked around, noticing every expensive object that filled his home. He knew that this disguise would be a challenge, but he also believed that it was the only way to establish a true connection with Gabriella. Alexander felt butterflies in his stomach, something he had not felt in years. The idea of leaving behind his identity, his comfort, was both frightening and exciting. But he was determined. He did not want the barrier of wealth to prevent a relationship that, in his heart, he already knew was special. Determined to follow through with this plan, Alexander called his longtime friend, Javier, someone he trusted completely and who had always helped him on his adventures. "Javier, I need your help with something different," Alexander said, his voice carrying a rare mix of eagerness and excitement. "I want to get to know Gabriella without her knowing who I really am." Javier, on the other end of the line, was silent for a moment before answering. "Alexander, are you sure about this? It's not something you do every day." "I've never done this before," Alexander admitted, "but that's exactly why I need to do it now." "You want to pretend to be someone else to get close to Gabriella?" Javier asked, his voice thick with disbelief. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the situation. "Alexander, this isn't just risky. It's complicated." Alexander, sitting in the leather office chair, folded his hands and looked at Javier seriously. "I have to do this, Javier. Gabriella is different. She doesn't care about money or status. If I approach her like I am now, she'll back away before she even gets to know me properly." Javier sighed, shaking his head slightly. "I understand what you're trying to do, but what if she finds out? What if she feels betrayed? Have you thought about the consequences?" Alexander nodded, but the determination in his eyes didn't waver. "I've thought about all of that, but I believe the risk is worth it. I need to know Gabriella for who she really is, without my wealth getting in the way. I just need your help to make that happen." Javier stared at his friend for a moment before finally giving in. "Okay, Alexander, I'll help you, but only because I know you won't give up on this. Let's start with a basic disguise. We'll take away that millionaire look and turn you into someone ordinary." Alexander smiled, feeling relief mixed with excitement. "Thanks, Javier. I knew I could count on you." "But promise me one thing, Alexander," Javier said, staring at him. "If this starts to go wrong, if at any point you feel like you're losing control of the situation, you'll tell me. I want to make sure you don't get hurt from this." "I promise," Alexander replied sincerely. "And neither will Gabriella." Javier nodded, already beginning to plan what it would take to transform Alexander into someone unrecognizable. "Okay, let's work on it. If we're going to do this, let's do it right." With Javier's help, Alexander underwent a complete transformation. His hair, always impeccably combed, was now disheveled, and he had traded his expensive suits for simple, worn clothes. An old cap and a worn backpack completed his disguise. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. Perfect, he thought, adjusting his cap. It was late when Alexander headed to the park where Gabriella usually spent her shift at the store. He had watched her from afar a few times and knew that she liked to sit on a particular bench under a large tree to relax after a long day of work. When he arrived at the park, Alexander took a deep breath, trying to calm his anxiety. The park was quiet, with few people walking around or sitting on the benches. He spotted Gabriella from afar, exactly where he expected her to be. She was holding a paper bag next to her, probably with the dinner she had bought to take home. With hesitant steps, Alexander approached, making sure his disguise was convincing. He sat on a nearby bench, but not so close that it would look suspicious. He observed Gabriella discreetly, noticing how tired but at the same time serene she looked. The setting sun cast a golden light over her face, and Alexander felt his heart race. He knew the next step would be to find a way to start a conversation with her, but he wanted it to be natural, without forcing it. Alexander stood there, quiet, waiting for the right moment to approach her. And as he waited, he wondered if Gabriella could really see him for who he was, beyond the disguise. Alexander knew he needed to find a way to approach Gabriella in a genuine way. Suddenly she sat down on a bench near where he was. Gabriella was unwrapping a piece of bread, and he decided that this was the moment. He took a deep breath and with slow, unsure steps, walked over to where she was. "Excuse me," he said, his voice hesitant. I haven't eaten anything all day. Could you share some of what you have?" Gabriella looked up, surprised, but without a trace of judgment in her gaze. She saw a simple man, with worn clothes and a humble expression. "Of course," she replied with a gentle smile. "It's not much, but it's what I have." She broke the bread into 2 pieces and handed one to Alexander, who accepted it gratefully. "Thank you, really," he said, sitting on the floor next to the bench. He pretended to bite into the bread with a hunger he didn't really feel, but Gabriella's gesture touched something deep inside him. "Don't worry," Gabriella said, looking at him. "We all go through hard times. I just hope this helps a little." Alexander nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and admiration. "You're very kind," he said. "Not everyone shares what they have, especially with a stranger." Gabriella shrugged, her soft smile still present. "Life is hard for many of us. If we don't help each other, who will?" Alexander, with the piece of bread in his hand, was silent for a moment, reflecting on her words. He knew that this simple exchange was only the beginning, but he could already feel the impact of Gabriella's sincerity. He was more determined than ever to get to know her better, without revealing his true identity yet. After they finished the bread, Gabriella looked up at the sky where the sun was already setting. "I have to go now," she said, getting up from the bench and picking up the bag next to her. "My mother is waiting for me at home." Alexander nodded, but something inside him didn't want this interaction to end there. He decided to follow Gabriella, keeping a distance enough to not seem suspicious. His curiosity about her life only grew, and he felt a need to better understand who was the woman who had already touched him so deeply with a simple gesture of kindness. Gabriella walked with determined steps, following the busy streets until she entered a quieter area of the city, where the houses were small and modest. Alexander kept to the shadows, making sure he wouldn't be noticed. She finally stopped in front of a simple house with worn walls and an iron gate that creaked when opened. It was clear that the place had seen better days. Gabriella went inside, and Alexander stood outside, watching. The house looked frail, the windows dusty, and the garden unkempt. He could see a dim light coming on in one of the windows, probably the living room. Alexander's heart sank as he imagined the hard life Gabriella must have led there. He had never seen up close what it was like to live in such conditions, and it came as a shock to him. Feeling a whirlwind of emotions, he decided that he needed to continue this journey to fully understand Gabriella and the reasons that made her so different from anyone he had ever met. He walked away silently, promising himself that somehow he would find a way to help, but without breaking the trust he was just beginning to build. Over the next few days, Alexander continued to observe Gabriella's routine, always keeping his distance so as not to be noticed. He discreetly followed her as she went to and from work, her actions always so calm and determined, as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders without ever complaining. One day, at nightfall, he saw her enter the modest house again. He waited for a few minutes until the light came on in the same window as before. Driven by curiosity and growing concern, Alexander cautiously approached, trying to see more of Gabriella's life. Through the dusty glass, he saw a scene that left him speechless. Gabriella was kneeling next to a bed, holding the hand of an older woman who looked frail and sick. Gabriella's mother, with a tired expression, seemed to be struggling to breathe, while Gabriella whispered words of comfort and tenderly stroked her hair. Alexander felt a lump in his throat as he witnessed this scene. The poverty of the place was evident: peeling walls, old furniture, and few items scattered around the small room. The simplicity contrasted sharply with the luxurious life he was used to. What impressed him most was Gabriella's dedication. She showed no signs of tiredness or impatience, only love and concern. He watched her prepare a bowl of soup, helping her mother sit down to eat, and then carefully covering her with a worn blanket. All of this was done with a care that Alexander had never witnessed before. As he walked away from the house that night, Alexander could not get the image of Gabriella out of his mind, struggling against so many adversities, yet still maintaining an unwavering kindness. Her life was a stark contrast to his own, and he found himself deeply touched and shocked. Gabriella was not only surviving, but doing so with a strength that Alexander was beginning to deeply admire. This new knowledge only strengthened his determination to get to know Gabriella better and, perhaps, find a way to ease the burden she carried. Over the next few days, Alexander continued to watch Gabriella with increasing attention. He increasingly realized that her life was a constant battle, not only for herself, but especially for her ailing mother. It was clear that Gabriella carried an immense responsibility on her shoulders, never showing weakness or complaint. He saw her wake up early every morning, prepare a small meal for her mother before leaving for work. The care with which she adjusted her mother's pillows and made sure that everything was within reach revealed a deep and unconditional devotion. Alexander also noticed how Gabriella saved every penny, prioritizing her mother's medicine and comfort above any personal needs. It was painfully clear that Gabriella lived to care for her mother, sacrificing her own dreams and comfort. Alexander, who had never had to give up anything, began to understand the true meaning of love and sacrifice through her actions. With each passing day, he was more impressed by Gabriella's strength and resilience, and a new admiration grew within him. Alexander felt a mixture of admiration and sadness as he realized that Gabriella was not only struggling to survive, but doing so with a grace and dignity he had never seen before. It touched him in a way he couldn't explain, and he knew he had to help her somehow, even if he was still trying to figure out exactly how to do it, without intruding on her life or disrespecting her independence. Alexander kept running into Gabriella at the park, becoming a familiar figure in her routine. Little by little, she began to feel comfortable in his presence. Alexander always listened attentively, taking his time, creating an environment where Gabriella felt comfortable opening up. "You're always so patient with me," Gabriella said one day with a shy smile. "It's rare to find someone who really listens." "I like listening to you talk, Gabriella," Alexander replied, feeling sincere. "You have a strength that I admire so much." Gabriella lowered her eyes, as if trying to hide the emotion that was rising. After a moment of silence, she finally opened up. "My mother. She's been very sick. That's why I work so hard. Every penny goes to her medicine and trying to make things better for her." Alexander watched the subtle pain in Gabriella's eyes as she spoke. "It must be very hard for you," he said softly. "Yes," Gabriella admitted with a deep sigh. "But she's always been my biggest supporter. Now it's my turn to take care of her." Alexander was touched by Gabriella's devotion. She didn't speak with self-pity, but with a determination he couldn't ignore. "And how is she now?" "Some days are better than others," Gabriella replied, looking off into the distance. "Sometimes she has the strength to talk. Other times, she can barely get out of bed. I just want her to suffer as little as possible." Alexander could tell that Gabriella's concern for her mother went far beyond her own needs or desires. It was a constant struggle to make sure her mother had some comfort, even if it meant giving up everything for herself. He felt a growing admiration for Gabriella, but also a burning desire to help her in some way, even though she still didn't know his true identity. Alexander spent the next few days paying attention to the little details of Gabriella's life. He saw her caring for her mother with impressive patience and dedication, always putting her needs ahead of her own. With each gesture, Alexander saw more clearly how much Gabriella was willing to sacrifice for her mother. One day, while they were walking together in the park, Alexander asked casually, "And how are the finances? Are you able to cover the costs of her treatment?" Gabriella looked away for a moment, as if considering the answer. Then she replied, trying to give an answer that wasn't too direct. "I'm doing my best. There's always something we can cut or save, you know. It's never easy, but we keep trying." Alexander noticed that she was avoiding talking about money clearly, which was to him a more than understandable attitude. Gabriella didn't seem to want to depend on anyone, not even him, despite everything he knew he could do to help her. She preferred to fight alone, preserving her dignity, rather than accept help that might hurt her pride. "I understand," Alexander said, trying not to pressure her. "I know how tight things can be sometimes." Gabriella, not wanting to go into the subject further, just nodded. She preferred not to talk too much about her financial difficulties because, in her heart, she wanted people to see her not as someone who needed help, but as someone who gave her best without asking for anything in return. "I just do what I can," she added, almost philosophically. "Life has its difficulties, but I prefer to look at the good things. You never know what tomorrow will bring, so I prefer to live in the present and be with her." Alexander, touched by the way Gabriella was dealing with her reality, felt an internal dilemma. He wanted to help her in any way he could, but he knew that it had to be done carefully. He didn't want her to feel pressured or humiliated, as if she were inferior for needing help. That would make her feel even more vulnerable. He was silent for a while, reflecting on what he could do to ease Gabriella's burden without infringing on her autonomy. But at that moment, he knew one thing for sure. Gabriella's real struggle was not just against poverty, but against the idea of needing someone to help her. She wanted to achieve everything on her own, and Alexander felt a deep respect for that. One quiet afternoon, Gabriella surprised Alexander with an invitation he hadn't expected. After weeks of talking in the park, she asked him out in a simple way, but with a sincerity that touched his heart. "Alexander," she said, a little hesitantly, "if it's not too much trouble, I'd like to invite you to my house for dinner. I don't have much, but I'd like to share what I have with you." Alexander was surprised, but at the same time touched by Gabriella's generosity. He knew she didn't have much, and this gesture was a reflection of her genuine kindness. "I'd be honored," he replied with a sincere smile. "I don't want to be a bother." "It won't be a bother," she assured him with a shy smile. "I'll prepare something simple, but it will be nice to have you there." When Alexander arrived at Gabriella's small home, he was greeted with a warm smile. The house, though simple and modest, had a welcoming feel. Gabriella led him into the dining room, which was small but carefully arranged. The smell of home-cooked food filled the air, and Alexander felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in a long time. "I made a simple dish," Gabriella said, as she approached the table, placing a plate of rice with vegetables and a piece of roast meat. "That's what I had today. I hope you like it." Alexander sat at the table, feeling at home, even though the simplicity of the setting was a contrast to the luxury he was used to. He realized that, for Gabriella, this gesture was not just about offering food, but about sharing the little she had with someone she was beginning to trust. "Gabriella, you don't know how much this means to me," Alexander said, taking the first bite and savoring the dish with gusto. "I really appreciate what you did." She smiled, but her smile was tinged with a slight sadness. "It's not much, Alexander, but it's what I have, and it's what I can give. I just want my mother to be okay, and you've been a good friend to me." During dinner, Alexander watched as Gabriella shared everything she had with generosity. She wasn't concerned with what she didn't have, but with what she could give, and that to him was a great act of courage and love. The meal was simple, but filled with meaning. Gabriella, with her small and delicate gestures, showed the true wealth she carried within herself. As they talked, Alexander realized that despite her difficulties, Gabriella had a light that illuminated everything around her. He felt deeply touched, more than he had ever imagined he would feel. "You have a big heart, Gabriella," he said softly. "I really admire your generosity." She lowered her head, a little embarrassed, but her eyes shining with gratitude. "I only do what I can," she said. "We all have something to offer, no matter how much we have or don't have." Alexander was silent for a moment, reflecting on her words. He began to understand on a deeper level the true value of a person. Gabriella, with her humility and generosity, was teaching him what really mattered in life. It wasn't possessions or status, but the ability to share and care for one another. After dinner, Alexander and Gabriella's conversation continued for a while longer, but soon she got up, saying she needed to get ready for the evening routine. Alexander, his eyes attentive and his mind still full of questions about Gabriella's life, watched her as she went to a small drawer in the living room. He didn't want to be intrusive, but something about him aroused a growing curiosity. Gabriella, with quick and discreet gestures, opened the drawer and took out two objects. First, she took out a small glass bottle with a white label that Alexander couldn't read from a distance. She placed it carefully on the table, as if she was taking great care not to let anyone notice. The bottle looked old, and Alexander imagined it was something related to Gabriella's mother's health, perhaps some expensive medicine. But what caught Alexander's attention even more was what she did next. Gabriella, with a serious and almost furtive expression, took an envelope out of her bag. It was a simple envelope, but when he opened it, Alexander realized that it was full of money. What impressed him most was the fact that Gabriella put the money at the bottom of the drawer, next to the bottle, as if it was something she wanted to keep hidden from any prying eyes. Alexander was paralyzed for a moment, not knowing what to make of the scene he had just witnessed. She had kept the money so discreetly, and at the same time it seemed to be a valuable and necessary medicine for her mother. He wondered why Gabriella didn't use this money more openly, why she felt the need to hide all of this. That was when he realized something important. Gabriella was not only fighting for herself, but for her mother, who was seriously ill. The situation was not just one of financial need, but something deeper and more distressing. She was willing to sacrifice her own dignity to take care of her mother without anyone knowing how difficult it was for her. The scene had been revealing, but it also left him feeling helpless. How could he help her without invading her privacy? How could he ease Gabriella's suffering without making her feel even more uncomfortable? She seemed to be carrying the world on her shoulders, and the truth about her struggle was being carefully hidden from everyone around her. Alexander stood there for a few minutes, reflecting on what he had seen. He could no longer ignore Gabriella's pain, and he knew that in order to truly help, he would need to understand what she was going through. However, he felt there was a fine line between being supportive and becoming a burden to her. The revelation about the medicine and the money only widened the gap between what he could offer and what Gabriella truly needed. He made a decision. He needed to talk to her, but now with more respect, more sensitivity, and without rushing to solve everything, but rather to listen. The trust that was forming between them was fragile, and he didn't want to break it. He knew that, in order to be the support that Gabriella so needed, he would have to start by being someone who truly understood her, without rushing to offer solutions that she might not want or be able to accept. At that moment, Alexander was certain that his journey with Gabriella was just beginning, and that she, with her courage, still had a lot to teach him about the value of small things, like what we choose to hide and what we choose to share. Alexander spent the night awake, lying in bed, with his thoughts racing. The scene he had witnessed that night, of Gabriella hiding the bottle of medicine and the envelope full of money, wouldn't leave his head. He tried to understand, to reason about what it meant, but the more he thought, the more doubts accumulated. What was happening to her? Why was she hiding the money? What else was she hiding? The clock on the wall seemed to make time pass slowly, marking the growing tension within him. Alexander, accustomed to solving his problems with quick and practical solutions, now found himself immersed in a dilemma that he could not decipher. Gabriella, the woman who seemed so genuine, so devoted to his mother, was now surrounded by an aura of mystery. The transparency he thought he had with her began to fade, as if there was something he was not seeing, something hidden behind Gabriella's smile and kind words. Alexander tried to justify it to himself. Maybe she is just afraid to ask for help, afraid to show how complicated her situation is. Who would want to show how much she is suffering, especially to someone she has just met? He tried to calm his mind, but something did not fit. Why was that money being guarded so zealously? And why was she acting as if she did not need it? It made no sense. He knew that, no matter how much he tried to understand, it bothered him more and more. Distrust began to grow, although Alexander knew he didn't want to see Gabriella in a negative light. He wanted to trust her. However, the questions multiplied without answers. Was she doing something wrong? Was she hiding something important from everyone? Or perhaps, most painful for Alexander, was she hiding something from him? The feeling of being deceived, even without proof, tightened his chest like a stone. Doubt corroded his certainties. As the night progressed, he got out of bed several times, trying to distract himself, walking around the house, looking out the window, as if hoping that, somewhere, the answer to his doubts would magically appear. But instead, the night seemed to drag on, as if time itself was refusing to let him rest. Finally, when sleep came, it was heavy and restless. He woke up several times during the night, with his heart racing, always returning to the same question. What was Gabriella really hiding? The next morning, Alexander was not as energetic as before. He woke up with his face marked by worry, his eyes tired, as if the weight of sleepless nights had already begun to leave him visibly dejected. He looked in the mirror and saw a different man from the one who had arrived at the park weeks before, someone now immersed in a doubt that consumed him. Gabriella's life, until then, had been a fertile field of admiration and sympathy, but now, with distrust infiltrating his thoughts. He no longer knew what to believe. Was she the woman he was beginning to admire, the woman he was beginning to want to help? Or was she someone with a dark secret, someone who was playing a game more complex than he could imagine? Alexander did not want to be that kind of person, someone who doubts without foundation, but the images he had in his mind were too powerful to ignore. The bottle of medicine, the envelope of money, all of it seemed like an unsolvable puzzle. And with each passing day, he felt that he was more distant from Gabriella than before, even though she still welcomed him with a sincere smile and welcoming gestures. He knew he needed to do something. He needed to find out the truth. But with the growing certainty that this could change everything between them, he didn't know if he was ready for that. Alexander, still with the weight of doubts on his mind, decided that he needed answers. The park, the setting where it all began, now seemed to be the place where he could finally understand who Gabriella really was. He knew that he could not continue with this whirlwind of uncertainty. Something in him told him that if he wanted to continue on this path with her, he would have to trust her completely, but to do so, he needed to understand what was happening in her life. He was determined, but he also knew that he would have to be careful. Gabriella, with her reserved and gentle manner, did not seem willing to open her heart easily, especially when it came to delicate matters such as money and her mother's health. Alexander wanted to show her that he could be trusted, that he was not there to judge, but to support her. However, he also felt that he could not remain in ignorance forever. The sun was beginning to set when Alexander arrived at the park. It was the same setting that he knew so well, the trees gently swaying in the wind, the children playing, the smell of fresh grass in the air. But for him, at that moment, everything seemed different. He watched the couples strolling, the groups of friends talking, and he felt a silent loneliness that accompanied him. Maybe deep down, he was more distant from everyone around him than he had ever been. Doubt had created an invisible barrier between him and the truth. When he saw Gabriella in the distance, he felt a momentary relief. She was walking slowly, with that shy smile that always enchanted him. It was impossible not to notice the grace with which she moved, the calm way in which she observed the world around her. But something seemed different that afternoon. Gabriella seemed distracted, as if something was bothering her. Her eyes, normally so warm and welcoming, were slightly distant, as if she was somewhere else, thinking about something she didn't want to reveal. Alexander made a quick decision. He didn't want to seem forced, but he knew he needed to break the ice. He needed to start the conversation in a simple way, without rushing. So he approached Gabriella with a friendly smile, the most genuine he could muster. "Hi, Gabriella," he said softly. "How are you today?" Gabriella looked at him in surprise, but then a shy smile appeared on her face. "Hi, Alexander. I'm fine. Just thinking about some things, you know." She paused, seeming to hesitate for a moment. "And how are you?" Alexander settled down next to her on the bench where she was sitting. "I'm fine too. I just needed to talk to you." She looked at him, and he saw a spark of curiosity in her eyes, but also a slight apprehension. She didn't know what to expect from this, and Alexander could tell she was trying to keep her guard up. "What did you want to talk about?" Gabriella asked, her expression a little guarded. Alexander took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't be abrupt, but he also knew he couldn't wait much longer. I wanted to better understand what's happening to you, Gabriella, what you're going through. I worry about you, and I see that there are many things you don't share. I know there's something you haven't told me, and I just wanted to know if I could help." Gabriella looked at him in silence for a few seconds, her eyes shining with an emotion that Alexander couldn't immediately understand. There was something there, a mix of surprise, sadness, and a need to be understood. but at the same time, a resistance to revealing more about her life. She looked away, as if evaluating what he had just said. "It's not easy, Alexander," she finally answered, her voice soft but with a hint of silent pain. I don't want you to look at me differently, to think that I'm a bad person for doing what I do. I worry about my mother, and sometimes things get too hard to explain." Alexander felt his heart tighten at her words. He wanted to tell her that he understood her, that he wouldn't judge her, but he knew it took more than words. He wanted to earn her trust. But how? How could he show her that he was there to support her, without expectations, without judgment? "Gabriella," he said, his voice firm but full of sincerity, "I don't want you to feel alone. I care about you, about everything you're going through. And even though I don't know exactly what you're going through, I want to be by your side. Just let me know the truth. If not now, then someday." There was a pause, a tension in the air. Gabriella looked at him, her gaze fixed, as if she were evaluating his words, trying to understand if he was really willing to listen without judgment. Finally, she sighed and, with a shy smile, said, "I don't know if I'm ready to tell you everything, Alexander. But maybe, little by little, I can let you into my world. I just hope you don't regret it later." Alexander felt a wave of relief, but he also knew that this was only the beginning. He still had a lot to discover, and now, more than ever, he knew that the path to earning Gabriella's trust would be long and difficult. But deep down, he was determined to move forward, step by step, until Gabriella's truth was fully revealed, and perhaps, with that, the love between them could finally blossom. After so many days of silent observation, Alexander could no longer bear to live with doubt eating away at his chest. He knew there was something more to Gabriella's life, something she did not share, something she hid so zealously. And although he wanted to believe he could trust her, the truth seemed essential to him. He could not continue to go around in circles, always wondering what was going on in her mind. Something inside Alexander urged him to take action. One afternoon, in the same park where they had met so many times, he waited for her. Gabriella arrived a little later than usual, looking exhausted, as if the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Her steps were slower, her gaze more distant. When he saw her approaching, Alexander did not hesitate. He was determined to put an end to the doubt that haunted him. "Gabriella, we need to talk," he said, his voice deeper than he intended. She looked at him, surprised, but still sat down next to him, a shy smile on her face, as she always did. But Alexander could see that her smile was forced, as if she sensed something was about to happen. "About what, Alexander?" she asked, trying to sound calm, but the tension in her voice was clear. I don't know what to think anymore," Alexander said, staring into her eyes. "There's something you're hiding from me. I see it in your eyes. I see the way you avoid talking about your life, about what's really going on. I feel like you haven't told me everything, Gabriella, and it's eating me up." Gabriella took a deep breath and looked away, as if searching for the right words. Alexander noticed her discomfort, the way she hesitated, and his heart sank. But he needed to know the truth. He had to be honest with her, just as he wanted her to be with him. "I know you're not happy about this," Alexander continued, "but I care about you, I do. I can't keep watching you hide everything all the time. I just want to understand what's going on." Gabriella was silent for a moment, staring at her hands. The gentle wind was making her hair move, but she was so lost in thought that she didn't seem to notice. Then, finally, she spoke, and her voice, even soft, carried a burden of pain that Alexander had never imagined she was carrying. "You're right, Alexander," she said, her voice shaking. I can't hide it anymore. I don't want to hide it anymore. I've done things you would never imagine. And it's not because I wanted to. It's because I had no choice. Alexander leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. His mind was racing, full of questions, but he knew that now was the time to listen, to understand. Gabriella looked at him, and in her eyes there was a mixture of sadness and shame, but also a glimpse of relief, as if she was finally letting a weight off her shoulders. I work in taverns, Alexander, and on some nights, in brothels. It's the only way I found to earn money for my mother's treatment. You've seen our house. You know how difficult things are. I do what I can. I'm not proud of it. But it's the only way I found to survive, she said, almost breathlessly, as if she were releasing a long-kept secret. Alexander, hearing her words, felt a deep pain in his chest. He knew about Gabriella's difficult situation, but he had never imagined that she was going through this. He had never imagined that she would be forced to make such difficult, painful decisions. He wanted to run to her, hug her, and tell her that everything would be okay. But the truth, the rawness of the situation, still hung in the air like a shadow. "Gabriella," Alexander said, his voice low and full of emotion, "I can't imagine what you've been through. And I'm so sorry for making you hide all of this. I understand you. I'm not here to judge you. I want to help you. I really do. I want you to know that you can count on me. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Gabriella looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears, but she forced a fragile smile. "I didn't know how to tell you, Alexander. I thought that if you knew, you would hate me. I thought you would never want to see me again. I don't want you to look at me with pity." Alexander took her hand gently and looked into her eyes with a sincerity she had never seen before. "Gabriella, I would never look at you with pity. What you're doing, I can't imagine the pain this must cause in your heart. But what matters to me is that you're an incredible person. And I'm here for you, no matter what. No matter what." She remained silent for a moment, absorbing his words, before finally answering, her voice calmer but still full of unexpressed emotions. I don't know what to do with all this, Alexander. I just know that I don't want to lose you. I don't want to hide things from you anymore, but I'm still afraid." Alexander smiled softly, squeezing her hand tenderly. "You won't lose me, Gabriella. Not as long as I can fight for you. We'll get through this together. I promise." And in that moment, under the peaceful sky of the park, Gabriella finally allowed herself to believe for the first time that maybe there was someone willing to walk by her side without fear, without judgment. And Alexander knew that even though the path was difficult, he wouldn't give up. Because deep down, he now understood. True love is built on trust, understanding, and the desire to be together, even in the darkest moments. Alexander felt the weight of the decision on his chest. He had lived with the lie for so long, and now, finally, he knew it was time to reveal the truth to Gabriella. The fear of losing what they had built together, even in such a short time, was immense, but he had to be honest with her, and that honesty, he feared, would be the greatest test of all. The park, where they had talked and grown closer, was emptier that late afternoon. The sky, with its soft orange and lilac colors, seemed to silently observe the moment that was about to happen. Alexander turned to Gabriella, who was sitting next to him, her eyes lost in the horizon, as if, unconsciously, she also knew that something was about to be revealed. "Gabriella," he began, his voice hesitant, "there is something I need to tell you, something I can no longer hide." She looked at him sideways, a little suspicious, but smiled, not knowing that those words would change everything between them. "What is it, Alexander?" "You seem serious to me." Alexander took a deep breath. He could feel the tension building in his body. He swallowed hard before continuing. I'm not who you think I am, Gabriella. I'm a millionaire. My real name is Alexander Montero, and I'm not the simple man you've known. I disguised myself to meet you, to find out if you liked me for who I am and not for what I have. The words fell like a weight in the air, and Alexander watched Gabriella's face, which initially looked shocked. Her expression changed quickly, and a heavy silence took over everything. She didn't say a word. Her eyes, which had previously reflected trust and a growing connection, were now filled with confusion and pain. Gabriella, with a slow movement, stood up. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she stood firm, her face marked by sadness. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. The pain in her chest seemed unbearable, and Alexander's words echoed in her mind like a direct blow. You lied to me?" she asked, her voice cracked with emotion. "At first you told me that you wanted to get to know me, that you didn't care about anything other than who I am. And now, you tell me that you did all this as part of a test. Did you play with me?" Alexander felt emptiness taking over his body. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to understand what he had done wrong, but the words simply wouldn't come. Gabriella, visibly hurt, continued, "I opened my life to you. I shared my difficulties, my pain, and you were just playing. I thought you were different. I thought that finally someone was interested in me and who I really am. But you were just trying to manipulate me." The pain in Gabriella's eyes was palpable, and it tore at Alexander's heart. He tried to get closer to her, but she took a step back, as if the mere fact of being near him was a betrayal. The heat of the moment and the weight of her confusion made his mind spin, but he knew that the worst was already done. "Gabriella, please let me explain," he said, his voice weak, but Gabriella cut him off immediately, her eyes fixed on a distant place, as if she were trying to physically distance herself from the pain she felt. "No," she replied firmly, her voice thick with intense emotion. "There's nothing more to explain. I don't need your help, Alexander. I don't want your help. I thought you were different. But you're not. Don't give me excuses now." The wind seemed to have stopped, the silence around them both filled with the tension of the situation. Alexander, unable to find a way to regain her trust, felt small. He saw Gabriella turn around, walking toward the bench where they usually sat, but this time without looking at him. She didn't want to hear him anymore, didn't want to see him anymore. "Gabriella, please." He tried again, his voice breaking, but she didn't turn around. She took one last look back, and Alexander saw the pain on her face, reflecting the breaking of something they had so carefully begun to build. "I can't do it anymore," she said, her lips trembling. "Go away, Alexander. Don't look for me anymore. I need time. Time to understand what happened. Time to move on. But no, I can't trust you anymore." Alexander stood there, motionless, watching Gabriella walk away, each step she took feeling heavier to him than any other moment in his life. He didn't know if he would ever get back what he had lost, but he did know one thing. He had been selfish. He had tested Gabriella's heart, and now he was paying the price for it. She had asked him to leave, and even though his heart was breaking, he knew he had no choice but to respect her wishes. He turned and started walking in the opposite direction, each step a painful reminder of his failure, of the lie he had told, of the trust he had broken. And as he walked, a single thought echoed in his mind. Maybe, if it were possible to go back in time, he would never have disguised himself, never taken that test, because now he knew how much his honesty could have been more important than any secret kept. Alexander walked through the halls of his mansion, the weight of Gabriella's loss suffocating him with every step. He felt as if the world had collapsed, as if the only thing that truly mattered was her love. But as much as he knew he had made an irreparable mistake, he couldn't just give up. He couldn't live with the feeling that he had lost Gabriella forever because of his own arrogance and insecurity. As he tried to deal with the pain of rejection, an idea emerged in his mind. Maybe it was possible to fix things. Maybe there was a way to win Gabriella's trust again, to show her that he truly loved her. But for that, he needed the help of someone who knew her life better. He needed the help of Lily, Gabriella's neighbor. Lily was a simple woman, but with a huge heart. She knew the difficulties Gabriella faced, as she often helped her with everyday tasks, offering a friendly shoulder whenever needed. The closeness between them was evident, and Alexander was fully confident that Lily could be the key to bringing him and Gabriella back together. One afternoon, Alexander went to Lily's house. He didn't know exactly what to say, but he felt that this was the only chance he had to make up for the mistake he had made. When he arrived, he rang the doorbell and waited, his heart racing, until Lily opened the door. "Hello, Alexander." "What brings you here?" she asked, surprised to see him. Alexander hesitated for a moment, but he had no more time to waste. He knew he had to be direct. "I need your help, Lily. I made a terrible mistake with Gabriella, and now it feels like I've lost her forever. I want to make it right. I want to show her that I truly love her, but I need your help to do that. You're the only one who can help me." Lily stared at him for a moment, weighing his words. She knew Alexander well enough to hear that there was something genuine in his voice, something that indicated he was truly sorry. She crossed her arms and with a sigh said, "I know how much you care about Gabriella. But you hurt her, Alexander. She's hurt, and it won't be easy to earn her trust again." Alexander lowered his head, feeling Lily's pain more poignant than he imagined. "I know that. I messed up. And now what else can I do?" Lily thought for a moment, before speaking in a soft but firm tone. "Gabriella is a proud woman, Alexander. She values honesty and sincerity more than anything. What you need to do now is show her that you respect her, that you understand her feelings. You can't force anything. You just need to be patient and be there for her. If you really love her, you have to be willing to wait, without rushing." Alexander felt a sense of relief when he heard those words, as if, for the first time in days, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was willing to fight. "I'll do whatever it takes. I can't give up on Gabriella. I love her, Lily, and I won't let one mistake destroy everything." Lily looked at him seriously, but also with a touch of sympathy. "I know you're sorry, Alexander, but if you really want a chance, you need to be patient, act with respect, and not expect things to go back to normal right away. Gabriella needs to see that you truly love her, without games, without secrets." Alexander nodded, determined. "I'm going to do it. I'm going to show her, without a doubt, that I love her." Lily smiled, a small smile, but full of understanding. "Now go and do what you think is right. And remember, only time can heal the wounds you have caused." Alexander left Lily's house with a new sense of purpose. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew Gabriella was probably still very hurt, but he was determined. He promised himself that he would not give up, no matter how long it took or how hard it was. He had made a mistake, but he was ready to make amends, to fight for the love he felt for Gabriella. The journey was just beginning. Lily knew the path would not be easy, but she also knew that Gabriella deserved an explanation, a chance to understand Alexander's motivations. She watched her friend carefully, noticing the pain in Gabriella's eyes, who, despite wanting to believe in Alexander's love, was still hurt. The trust she had placed in him had been shattered, and the fear of being hurt again made her hesitate. "Gabriella, I understand that you're hurt," Lily began, sitting down next to her on the small couch. But don't you think you deserve to hear his side of the story? He really does regret it, and believe me, he's willing to do anything to prove that you can trust him. Gabriella looked at Lily with a look of sadness. But how can I trust him after everything that happened? He deceived me, used me, and now he wants me to believe his words. How can I forget that? Lily sighed and held Gabriella's hands, looking at her softly. I know you're in pieces, my dear, but sometimes people make mistakes. Alexander wasn't honest at first, but he's trying. He asked me for help, Gabriella. He wants to show you that what he feels for you is real. He doesn't want to hide who he is anymore or what he's done. If you don't give him the chance to explain himself, you might regret not listening to his story. Gabriella remained silent for a few moments, Lily's words echoing in her mind. She wanted to believe, wanted to give her love for Alexander a chance, but the pain of betrayal was still too fresh. What he had done seemed unthinkable. How could he disguise himself and lie for so long? I don't know, Lily. I feel so much pain. I feel so foolish for believing him. Gabriella finally whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. I just wanted to be loved for who I am, not for who he thought I was. Lily squeezed her hands tighter, as if she was giving Gabriella strength. I understand. And you're not foolish, Gabriella. You're an incredible woman who deserves to be truly loved. It's not easy to forgive. And I'm not saying you should forget what happened. But maybe if you give him a chance to explain himself, you'll be able to see his regret up close. You have the right to hear it. Gabriella stared at Lily for a long moment, her mind in turmoil. What she felt for Alexander was still deep, but doubt and fear of being hurt again were blocking her ability to forgive. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. I don't know, Lily, Gabriella whispered, but maybe I should give him a chance to hear what he has to say. I just don't know if I can trust him again. Lily smiled softly, touching Gabriella's shoulder affectionately. You don't have to make that decision now. Just listen to what he has to say. The rest will come in time. Sometimes the pain is great, but it is also possible to find your way back to love. Gabriella nodded slowly, still unsure of what to do. It's okay, Lily. I'll find him. But if I feel bad, if he tries to manipulate me again, I'll leave. I won't let him make a fool of me again. Lily smiled, happy for Gabriella's decision. I know you're strong, Gabriella. I'll be here for you, no matter what. Later that afternoon, Alexander received a text from Lily, informing him that Gabriella had agreed to meet him. Anticipation and nervousness filled Alexander, but he knew he couldn't hesitate. This was his only chance to redeem himself, to show Gabriella that he loved her and that past mistakes didn't define how he felt about her. When the meeting finally happened, Alexander was waiting anxiously in the square where they often met. He was nervous, his heart pounding in his chest, but when he saw her approach, his eyes lit up, and he took a step forward, eager but cautious. Gabriella was tense, her eyes still filled with pain, but she had made the choice to listen. She didn't know what to feel, but she knew she needed to understand. Gabriella, Alexander said, his voice full of regret. I understand that you have doubts, that you are hurt. And I can't take back what I did, but I want you to know that I love you. And I did all this because I needed to know that you loved me for who I am, and not for my wealth. Gabriella looked at him silently, the words weighing on her mind. She knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to listen. Hope and fear still mixed inside her, but maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward healing. I don't know if I can believe it again, Alexander, Gabriella replied, her voice cracking, but I'm listening, and you have this chance. The pain was still there, but perhaps, in time, they could rebuild something, or at least Alexander would have a chance to make amends for his mistake. Alexander was visibly nervous, his hands sweating, and his heart beating fast. The conversation with Gabriella had reached a crucial point. He knew this was his last chance to show her that his love was true and that he was sorry for everything he had done. He looked into her eyes, full of pain, and knew he had to be completely honest. "Gabriella," Alexander began, his voice firm but thick with emotion. "I know that everything I did, everything I hid, was a mistake. I wanted to know if you loved me for who I really am and not for what I have. But by doing so, I hurt you in a way I never imagined I could. I didn't see you as you really are. I saw you only as someone I wanted to conquer and not as someone who deserves respect and honesty." Gabriella watched him carefully, his words reaching her heart. But there was still a barrier, a layer of distrust that she couldn't ignore. She knew Alexander was apologizing. But would it be enough to erase everything that had happened between them? Alexander took a deep breath before continuing, sincerity in every word. "I love you, Gabriella. From the moment I met you, something in me changed. I never thought I would find someone like you, someone with so much strength, so dedicated, so true. And that's why I decided to hide my identity, because I wanted to know if you really loved me for who I am and not for what I can offer. But by doing so, I showed you a false side of myself, and that's something I'll never do again. I'm asking for your forgiveness, and I know it won't be easy. But please, give me the chance to prove that what I feel for you is real." Gabriella felt a mix of emotions as she listened to Alexander's words. Her heart was still torn between the pain of betrayal and the hope that maybe he was being genuine this time. She knew she couldn't ignore the feelings she had for him, but she also knew she had to be careful. Trust couldn't be regained overnight. "You hurt me, Alexander," Gabriella said, her voice shaking. "And I know you have your reasons, but I never imagined you would lie to me like that. I trusted you, and now all I feel is a mix of sadness and anger." She paused, looking at him, the words weighing on her mind. "But I love you too, Alexander. I can't deny that. So, if you really want a second chance, I need one thing: honesty. I don't want any more lies. I can't live in doubt, in uncertainty. If we're going to move forward, we need to be transparent with each other. Always." Alexander felt a sense of relief when he heard Gabriella's words. He knew there was still a lot to rebuild, but the fact that she was willing to give him a second chance was all he needed. He looked into her eyes with all the sincerity he had. "I understand, Gabriella, and you're absolutely right. From now on, I promise to be completely honest with you. No more secrets, no more lies. I will do whatever it takes to prove that my love for you is real and that you can trust me." Gabriella looked at him for a moment, considering his words, before giving him a small smile, although her expression was still serious. "I want to believe you, Alexander, but words aren't enough, you know that. We'll need time. And if you really love me, then I need to see your actions." Alexander nodded, understanding completely. "I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. And if you give me that chance, I promise I'll do everything I can to earn back your trust." Gabriella took a deep breath, her heart still heavy, but she felt a fragile hope emerging. Maybe in time, he could really prove that his change was genuine. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, but she knew that it would depend on his honesty and effort. "Okay, Alexander, I'll give you a second chance, but remember, honesty always, and no more surprises. If you betray me again, there will be no forgiveness." Alexander smiled, a tear escaping his eyes, not of sadness, but of gratitude and relief. He knew the road would be long, but at least he would have the chance to start over, to do things the right way. "I promise, Gabriella, I won't let you down again." And so, a new chapter began for both of them. Although there was a lot to rebuild, the first step had already been taken. With time, they could learn to trust each other again And who knows, together they could build a future based on true love and honesty that they so longed for. Alexander knew that words would not be enough to regain Gabriella's trust. He had to go further, to demonstrate through concrete actions how committed he was to the love he felt for her. After their conversation, he began to reflect deeply on everything she had been through, the difficulties she faced alone, and above all, her mother's suffering. He didn't want to be just a man of words, but someone who could make a difference in her life. With this determination, Alexander went looking for a way to help. Not just with money, but with the intention of giving Gabriella and her mother the life they deserved, and that's how he decided to act. One afternoon, he invited her for a walk. Gabriella, suspicious but still willing to give him a chance, accepted. They walked together for a while, and Alexander, with a slight hesitation, finally broke the silence. Gabriella, I know that nothing I say can erase what happened, but I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you how much you and your mother mean to me. Gabriella looked at him, not fully understanding what he meant. Alexander, I'm not sure I understand. Alexander looked her in the eye sincerely, his voice low but firm. I want to pay for all of your mother's treatment, Gabriella. And more than that, I want to build a new house for you, a home where you can live with dignity, without worrying about anything else. Gabriella stopped, her heart beating faster, surprise taking over her face. She didn't know how to react. What he was saying seemed too good to be true. How could she believe it? How could she accept such generosity from someone who had betrayed her? Alexander, that's a lot. I don't know if I can accept it. I don't need your charity. Alexander took a step toward her, trying to convey how genuine his gesture was. It's not charity, Gabriella. It's love. It's my way of showing you that I'm here for you, that I truly care. And I'm not doing this because I feel like I have to, or because I want something in return. I'm doing this because you and your mother deserve it. You deserve to live without suffering, without fear of the future. Gabriella was in shock. Alexander's words, combined with his attitude, touched her heart deeply. She looked at him, trying to understand if this was real, if he was really serious, or if, deep down, he just wanted to make up for everything he had done. Would you really do this for me? For us? Alexander nodded, his eyes shining with emotion. Yes, Gabriella. I would do that and much more. I know I made a mistake, that I hurt you. But if you give me the chance, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make things right. I will give you all the support you and your mother need. Gabriella, touched by Alexander's sincerity, felt tears threaten to fall. She didn't know what to do with that avalanche of feelings. For a moment, all she wanted was to feel that there was hope, that there was something more than pain and distrust. And that gesture from Alexander seemed to be the first sign that, perhaps, there really was a chance for them. Unable to contain her emotions any longer, Gabriella approached him and hugged him tightly. I don't know what to say, Alexander. Are you really willing to do all this? I'm so surprised. Alexander hugged her back, with a smile on his face, feeling that he was finally doing something right. Yes, Gabriella, I will do whatever it takes. Because you and your mother deserve to be happy. And I also want to be a part of that happiness. That hug was more than a simple gesture of affection. It was a symbol of rebirth for both of them. Gabriella, still with her heart full of doubts, felt for the first time that perhaps she could give Alexander's love a chance. And for Alexander, that moment meant that he was on the right path, truly fighting for what he felt. With the promise to act sincerely and to never let lies take over again, Alexander began to prove, with generous attitudes and concrete actions, that his love for Gabriella was not fleeting. It was real, deep, and above all, worthy of the trust that she was slowly beginning to consider giving him again. And so, what had begun with distrust and pain began to turn into a new opportunity. Their journey was just beginning, but for the first time, it seemed like there was hope for a future together, where love and honesty would be the foundations of everything they were building. The story of Alexander and Gabriella is coming to an end, but the lesson it leaves for everyone is timeless. True love is not built solely on grand gestures or pretty words. It is born of honesty, sacrifice, and above all, the willingness to grow and evolve together, despite the difficulties. Alexander, now fully committed to Gabriella and her mother, knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There was a lot to rebuild, and trust, once broken, would need time to heal. But he also knew that he was ready to face any obstacle alongside Gabriella, because what he felt for her was not fleeting or superficial. It was a love that had been forged through mistakes, regrets, and a sincere desire to be better. Gabriella, in turn, although still apprehensive, began to see in Alexander not a man of wealth and appearances, but someone who was willing to go beyond everything to see her happy. She learned that true love does not require perfection, but rather a commitment to the truth and well-being of the other. Alexander's gesture, as simple as it was powerful, had touched her heart in a way she never imagined possible. In the end, they both reflected on the journey they had taken, the lies, the mistakes, and the difficulties faced, but also the victories achieved together. They realized that, in the end, what really matters in love is what one does to keep the flame burning, to overcome obstacles, and to grow side by side. And it was with this conviction that they moved forward, ready to build a life together, stronger and more united than ever. True love, they now knew, is not only measured by moments of happiness, but also by the difficulties faced together. And so, with a lighter heart and restored trust, Alexander and Gabriella continued their journey, promising to never again forget the importance of honesty, sacrifice, and the desire to grow together. What did you think of this story? Leave a comment, and if possible, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss our next videos. A big hug, and see you next time.